Everyone is blaming the wildfire crisis in the West Coast on climate change, which I'm not denying as a factor, but the real problem is that the logging industry, which used to maintain healthy forests and forest roads, was overregulated out of existence. We all see what's going on the West Coast, and this has been a growing problem for many years now. Many people chalk this up to the continuing effects of climate change, which I am not denying as a factor and think we should continue to make progress in this arena. However, and this is the unpopular part because everybody loves to hate on loggers for some reason, many people don't realize, or don't want to admit, the role that the private logging industry used to play in keeping our forests healthy and managed, which they are no longer able to do now because of overregulation, overtaxation, and being forced into near non-existence, at least in CA. First, my sources. This paper asserts in the very first sentence that forest thinning, not clear cutting, is an effective means at reducing wildfire risk, but that it is too expensive and thus not regularly practiced. https://www.fs. fed. a/psw_GTR208n/psw_GTR208n/525-534_stone. PDF. This all makes sense, but what most people don't understand is that before the overregulation of the logging industry along the West Coast, referencing CA in particular, it was the loggers who performed forest thinning by responsibly cutting down trees in a non-clear cutting manner. Yes, clear cutting is bad, everyone agrees on that, and that's not what I'm referring to here. And this didn't cost the government, aka taxpayers, a dime, because it was simply the byproduct of a private industry. Additionally, it was the loggers and private industry that would keep the forest roads maintained because they needed to access them for logging. Since the logging industry has been crippled in the last few decades, those roads are no longer maintained and it is incredibly more difficult for firefighters to access the fires that they fight. This second part is more an observation, but I'll give my source anyway. I'm the son of a logger, who was himself the son of a logger. I was born, raised, lived my entire life, and still live, in the middle of the forests that are in question. In fact, my parents lost their house in the current fires 2 days ago. This is not vague theory to me. I've lived and seen it every year I've been alive. I'm not saying climate change isn't a factor. But the truth is that private industry, loggers, used to contribute significantly to healthy forest management, and since the industry has been overregulated almost to the point of non-existence, this is no longer the case. To further illustrate my point, here's a list of ways the logging industry, if practiced responsibly, helps prevent massive wildfires. Creates thinner forests, which means fire travels slower. Keeps a network of back roads open year-round, meaning fire response teams can get places faster and safer. Results in clearer underbrush as loggers need to clear brush to do their work. Reduces taxpayer costs, because the private industry helps manage forests privately instead of tax-funded government agencies. Creates more jobs which employ more people, and also produces more tax revenue. Creates a stronger local economy for forested regions like Norcal and others. Creates a stronger global economy. Why don't we log our own renewable resources instead of paying Canada for theirs? Man shrugging light skin tone. Helps wildlife to not have hundreds of thousands, millions, of acres of land incinerated each year. Additionally, what many people don't know is that in years past, many fires were stopped entirely before they could start, because the loggers themselves would contain them in their infancy stage. Remember, huge wildfires result in loss of profits for a company, and loss of work for an individual, so they are highly motivated to help prevent them. This also means that fewer of our fire response teams have to put themselves in harm's way, and that is something we can all agree on. There are, of course, cons to this. Namely clear cutting, harm to animal habitats, and injuries attained by loggers, which is a hard line of work. However, they are easily rectified with the proper regulations, not over-regulations, but proper ones, put in place to guide them. I think we've learned that throwing the baby out with the bathwater is not an ideal scenario. We don't outlaw cars because some people drive stupid. We just take away the licenses of those who do. So in summary, responsible logging would help create heavy checkmark fewer fires. Heavy checkmark safer line of work for fire response teams. Heavy checkmark less harm to wildlife. Heavy checkmark reduce government spending. Heavy checkmark increase government revenue. Heavy checkmark create more jobs. Heavy checkmark create a stronger economy. Heavy checkmark lower taxes. Heavy checkmark reduced loss of property and life. Finally, yes, I know there are other concerns that some have brought up as the source for our increased fire problems in recent years, climate change, for instance, but if that's also part of the problem, why not solve both? In fact, logging can help reduce pollution and emissions in the long run by 1. Reducing pollution from millions of acres of forest fires burning and 2. Providing more tax money to research cleaner technologies. It seems to me that when it comes to reopening the logging industry, just about everyone wins. Well, except maybe Canada, whose lumber exports to the U.S. take a hit. Sorry Canada. We'll buy more maple syrup to make up for it. As someone who has been fighting fires for the last 5 years, I concur with all that you state. Seems common knowledge around fire camp. I've also heard that California doesn't do controlled burns, which is essential to forest health. I have been doing controlled burns with the local national park and my old Boy Scout troop since 5th grade, and it's pretty clear why they are beneficial to forests. California has really gone to shit over the past few decades. Well done, sir. I respect the analysis. You are working uptight against a political narrative. As climate change is a factor, these other factors should not be overlooked. TLDR, but read the title as I'm about to got work on the fires zones in Cali with the company I work for in the tree industry. And based off the title I agree with you. We have lots of jobs we can't do because they want to save the trees. Very good unpopular opinion in this day and age, as it is very popular to blame everything on climate change. As someone who believes in climate change, I believe the trend to blame every isolated event on climate change completely dilutes the message and just provides fuel to those who see the climate change arguments as lacking a good scientific basis. I even get tired of hearing these baseless claims and put every media source that parrots them as unscientific garbage. Most of the areas burning have 150 trees per acre because of man, while nature produces closer to 70 trees per acre. It's not climate change. Only an unpopular opinion in weirdo lefty circles. I'm a climate scientist, not working specifically on forest fires, but in climate change, and this is an angle I hadn't considered. Thanks for this well thought out post. Keep voting the same party, they'll solve the problem eventually. Another thing not brought up in your op is that more timber would drive down the cost of timber, allowing homes to be built cheaper. That's a good step towards cheaper housing in general. What did California do before the loggers? Seems to me both mass logging and huge forest fires are both pretty recent developments. There's a lot of finger pointing going on from both sides of the aisle right now. I agree the logging industry has been criminally mismanaged in California, and in a lesser extent in Oregon. I also agree that shifting incentives for logging companies towards forest thinning along the West Coast would be a great benefit in a lot of areas. However, as much as I love to shit on Cali for their brain-dead environmental policies, forest management has very little to do with the current situation. Here's the rundown I gave on one of my Discord servers, straight from the mouth of my brother who's working as an incident commander fighting fires up in Tillamook, and has been for the last several years. The cause: there are two major contributing factors. The first and most significant is the wind conditions. The West Coast is currently undergoing a once-in-a-100-year phenomenon called the eastern winds. Typically in Oregon there is a consistent 5 to 12 miles per hour, 30% humidity breeze that blows in from the ocean. This is where most of our rain comes from. However, every 100 years or so, a vortex will form of the central U.S., west of the Rockies, in the Great Basin area. This wind blows in from the east at closer to 50 miles per hour, with gust up to 80 to 90 miles per hour, and at around 10% humidity. Secondly, this has been one of the driest summers in years. Combine the dry environment with the strong, dry winds, and you get power lines snapping all over the state and falling right into dry brush basically. This would have been better if this year had been wetter, this would have been better if we had better forest management, California in particular, Oregon does a good job with it, and this would have been better if the logging industry was more intelligently regulated. But at the end of the day, there isn't any reasonable amount of anything anyone could have done to prevent these fires from taking place. This was unavoidable, and inevitably terrible. For more information, here's the exact same situation, just on a smaller scale, https://en.m. Wikipedia.org/wiki/Tillamook_burn. Had they the same infrastructure we had now, I have no doubt they would have seen a very similar level of destruction we're seeing now.